I'm Jim Longworth, and welcome to another edition of Triad Today. Coming up later on, our infamous roundtable gets together. We'll see what they have to say about a wide range of topics, but between now and then, some great guests and information coming your way. We'll tell you more about foster care, understanding what foster care is and why there's such a need for it in our area. We'll also hear from two very special guests about some great fundraisers to help hospice, help others. And we'll meet the new provost at Winston-Salem State University. All that and much more. But first, we turn our attention to helping kids in a different way, and that means getting them backpacks for school, loaded with lots of goodies. And we have three folks who are involved in one way or the other in doing this big campaign. And next to me is David Daggett, an attorney with Daggett Schuler, who's been on the program many times before. Between, he and Griff brought a special guest, and she's sandwiched in between them. Chief Katrina Thompson is the Chief of Police for City of Winston-Salem, making a return visit to Triad Today. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Griff Schuler, attorney with Daggett Schuler. Thanks everybody for being here, and I want to go to David first. How is this backpack program that everybody's sort of working on, how is that different in terms of process, distribution? How's it different?
Well, there's a number of different backpack programs in the city, and there's actually more than one backpack program that the police department's involved in under Chief Thompson's leadership. This backpack program, it's different in that it's smaller in number, 250 backpacks, but every backpack is a very high quality, sturdy, will last the child multiple years. It is stuffed with everything back to school. Paper, notebook, folders, glue, scissors, eraser, pencils.
Right.
The whole work. So they're stuffed, they're full, there's pictures on screen. So it's full, and then we go straight to the guidance counselors of the schools, so the guidance counselors can select the most needy kids. There's 5 different colors backpacks, no logos, no markings whatsoever, so there's no stigma on the kids.
Yeah.
And we have a parade. Chief Thompson, it's this week on Wednesday. Chief Thompson will be there, a whole team of officers.
You're everywhere, aren't you?
She's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But actually go to the schools, and it makes a difference in our schools.
Right.
Not only for these kids, but that the Winston-Salem Police Department has taken a personal interest under the leadership of Chief Thompson herself.
And Griff, I know you're not a medical doctor, although you pretend to be one on TV. But the
Of course.
But people have talked about how kids need proper support and whatever, and these backpacks are great that you and David are giving out, right?
Well, it's got everything that they need from the very start, and statistics have showed and studies have shown that it's so important for kids to get off the right start for the school year from the very beginning, and so
Right.
having a backpack with the right supplies from the very beginning is very, very important. And I think one of the things that I enjoy so much about delivering the backpacks is seeing the reaction from the principals when we arrive at their schools with it, see their eyes just light up, and they just appreciate the Winston-Salem Police Department and us being there and delivering them to their schools.
Chief, I know this is big for you, and even though, you've only been chief for a while, but you've been in the police department for a while and you've seen this work. What are your feelings about the backpack program?
Well, being a young girl growing up in inner city Detroit, I understand the importance and what it means to a child to know that there are people out there that care. And for me, to be able to be a part of starting somebody's school year off right. These kids are going to replace us,
Yeah.
We never know when we're giving the backpack to the next, mayor, the next
Right.
police chief.
Good point.
And so at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're injecting that positivity onto the child, because actually, believe it or not, giving a child a backpack with everything that they need on their first day, it instills a certain level of confidence that takes the kids into the classroom.
That's a big leg up, and I know you appreciate the partnership that you're having with these guys
Absolutely,
too. Yeah.
absolutely, they're wonderful.
Any closing thoughts on that?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say our Winston-Salem Police Department's done a terrific job in our community. The tension that other communities experience, we don't. It's because of this leadership, and we all appreciate it.
And you see it's making a difference too, right?
Absolutely, it makes a huge difference in the community.
Yeah. This, the website, a couple things up there, DaggettSchulerLaw.com, check that out. But also we have one up there for cityofwinstonsalem.org/departments/police to check out all the great things that Chief Thompson and her crew are doing. Griff, I appreciate what you and David are doing in the community with this, as always, making a difference and interacting with the kids. Chief, thanks for keeping on and doing what you're doing.
Thank you, and I really appreciate their partnership.
They're pretty good guys.
They're
aren't they?
awesome.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
We'll be right back after this. Today, and we always like to take time each month to bring you some information from the good folks at Cross North School and Children's Home, and we have a special guest for the first time with us here. We'll introduce you to her right now. On my right is Sarah Norris, and Sarah is Child Welfare Division Director at Cross North School and Children's Home. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What does your job entail?
So I oversee 5 programs on 3 campuses. We have our foster care and adoptions program, 2 residential campus programs, a youth and transition program, and then we have a group of case managers that I oversee as well.
All right, so just so people understand, you take care of kids on a permanent basis. You have foster kids you're looking after, and maybe you're hoping to place them in a home somewhere.
Yes.
Now, how many children are in foster care in North Carolina, and how did they end up in there?
Over 12,000 at this point. It's kind of the last data that we've seen, and a lot of times what we see with children that end up in foster care is they come from a situation where parents or guardians, whoever they've lived with, are unable to provide safety or care for the children at that time. And so typically as social services will take custody and then try to work with the family on correcting the conditions that led to them having to remove the child.
And I know it just must put a strain on you guys and for the whole system, and it's just tragic, and I appreciate what you're doing for the kids. But I mean, in the old days, 100 years ago, I'd be watching a movie somewhere, and you always would say, well, these 2 kids are orphans, their parents died in a plane crash. Well, everybody sort of thought, well, that's how it happens. But too often we overlook at what's really causing the backlogs, which is the social angle of what's going on, right?
Yes. We have a lot of families that kind of have cyclical work where they've grown up in a dependent relationship with their families, or abuse that they've experienced as children, or neglect that unfortunately, if they're not able to learn new ways to cope, they end up doing similar things.
Because it's not a safe environment.
Exactly.
They need to get out of that. What's it now? You have, for people that haven't been on campus, it's a beautiful campus right off of Reynolds Road in Winston-Salem. You have other campuses too, and we
Correct.
can find out from the website. But I'm most familiar with the one in Winston-Salem. Just beautiful, has a farm and everything there. What there are cottages there too.
Yes.
Now, how does that cottage system work? What kind of feedback do you get from the kids?
So we have 6 cottages, and they live with what we call professional parents. And so they do a rotation where 2 parents per cottage will rotate 7 days on and 7 days off. So they sleep in the cottage, they have a parent bedroom, kids have their bedrooms, but it's set up just like any home. They have a kitchen, they've got a living room, they do dinner together, they go to school, do schoolwork after school. So it's very much a home environment, which
I was
is the
getting ready to
point.
say, we don't, sometimes we overlook the school part of it, but you guys have a great educational system. I've always had a good reputation for that. And you have the farm there, and the kids get to work on that. We can talk
They
about
do.
that on a later program. What can the public do, if anything, to support your mission?
Well, there's several things that they can do. You can check out all this on our website, but number 1 is pray for our kids and the staff that we work with, for sure, day-to-day basis. You can visit our campus and kind of see more of what we're about. We have volunteer opportunities that are not long-term, that they could provide work. We're always looking for foster parents. It's a huge need in North Carolina, and you don't have to be right in Winston to be able to do that.
Can you be a single parent?
You can, absolutely, if you meet the other qualifications, but you can be a single parent to be a foster parent.
Is it complicated for me I mean, I go to the website, I can call a number, I can ask to talk with you or somebody else, and what's the process very quickly? You don't have to go through the whole thing, but how difficult, how complicated is it for me to find out if I'm qualified as a foster parent?
You could do an information kind of thing through the website, or you could speak with one of our staff and they could run down a list of questions, kind of let you know what we're looking for.
Okay.
And then you go through classes and go through some other background checks if you want to be a foster parent.
Well, I just applaud what you're doing out there, and I want to, before I forget and time runs out, let me put up on screen www.crossnor.org. I'll say it again for our radio listening audience on WSJS, www.crossnor.org, and you can find out all sorts of information about their programs and services that we don't always have time to get into on the program here. But Sarah, thanks for everything you do.
Not a problem. We appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Now on Triad Today, and so glad we have 2 very special guests with us. I'm going to introduce one of them. She's going to introduce the other. This is going to be exciting. All right, on my immediate right, our good friend Sheila Jones, Director of Marketing for Mountain Valley Hospice and Palliative Care, we're so glad we could get her here. We have some great things to talk about, but before we get to that, I want you to, well, let's just hold on to that for a second. You and I'll talk for a minute, and then we'll introduce. All right, now first of all, let's remind viewers, seriously, And for those of us who have been through hospice programs with parents, we know about this, but remind people about what you do and what you offer.
We are Mountain Valley Hospice. We take care of terminally ill patients and their families, which is anyone that's have a life expectancy, no matter what the disease process, that is 6 months or less.
And as I said, you brought a special guest with you, so I want you to tell everybody who she is.
Well, it's Melissa Hyatt. She's our Director of Development. She's got new and exciting things going on for us in our upcoming years and trying to put together some development events. So I'm glad to have her as part of my team.
And welcome, Melissa. Now, were you born in this area?
I was. I
So
live
you
in
know
Surrey
what's
County.
going on then.
Yes.
All right, that's good. You'll know about the contacts and people you need to go out and help with various fundraising things. Sheila, let me ask you one thing, then I'll get to Melissa. How many years has Mountain Valley been providing hospice care to the region? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
We are celebrating this year 35 years of service. So that's kind of
Wow.
cool that we've been able to say that we've had our hands taking care of patients for that long.
All right, now Melissa, tell us about this big event, because Sheila sent me an email, so there's a big event coming up in November. What is that about?
Speaking of the 35 years, that's what we'll be celebrating in November. On the 10th, the 35-year anniversary of Mountain Valley Hospice, we'll be celebrating in a grand gesture with a masquerade ball.
A masquerade ball.
Yes.
Now, is it too early? We'll give website and stuff later on, but is it too early to start thinking about buying tickets or gearing up for that or what?
Sponsorship information will be available next week. Tickets will go on sale September the 24th, and all those things can be found on our website.
Let me go back and forth here, because one thing I want to ask you, Sheila, is I don't want people to forget that you have a new hospice home, although
do.
a lot of people get hospice care in their own home. Some that don't can go to a couple different hospice homes that you provide. How are things going with the one in Yadkin?
Well, it's going well. Of course, we have two, but the one in Yadkin is celebrating a one-year anniversary this week.
That's great.
This past week. We did that on Friday. They have done a wonderful job at caring for the community, so it's a wonderful celebration for that small community.
My mind is just racing about a lot of things, but I know you and I have talked in the past about the difference between profit and for-profit and nonprofit hospices. And I'm thinking, before we go back to mentioning the fundraisers and everything coming up, just let's remind people, what does it mean to patients and families to know that you guys are nonprofit?
The part about being nonprofit for us is that everything we make goes back into the organization. So we have all of our ancillary programs like our Kids Path, our We Honor Veterans, our Pet Peace of Mind, Transitions. All those programs are provided at no cost to those families. One of the very special programs is our Grief Support Program. If it wasn't for being able to be nonprofit, those programs would not exist for a nonprofit agency.
Right. Melissa, now let's go back to fundraising, because that ties in with what Sheila and I were just talking about. That it's important for the community to get involved. Mm-hmm. So do you often have, do you encourage community groups or organizations to do their own fundraisers to help?
We do, and those are the best kind of fundraisers because we don't have to spend staff hours on them. Actually, September the 29th, Ponies of the Piedmont are sponsoring a program called Mayberry Mustangs that will be Veterans Park in Mount Airy from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock that day. Great car show, food truck event.
September 29th, and what's that called now? The
Ponies, let's see.
Mustangs in Mayberry.
Mustangs in
Mustangs
Mayberry.
in Mayberry.
Yes.
It's a
Okay.
Mustang
I
and
thought you
Ford
said-
car
I thought you said
show.
it was Mustang Sally or something.
No.
I didn't what you.
I'm sure they'll
Ponies
probably
of the
play
Piedmont.
that.
September 29th.
Yes.
All right, very quickly now, if I want to do my own event, or our community group does, or whatever, is there a specific number or just the general number and website that we should get in touch with?
Should get in touch with me at the general number.
All right, let's put that up, since Melissa mentioned that, area code 336-789-2922. But you can also find out lots of information about hospice on the website, which is mtnvalleyhospice.org. That's up on screen for the radio audience. I'll say it again, mtnvalleyhospice.org, 789-2922. Please do that. If you're thinking about it, you can maybe do your own fundraiser, and keep in mind the September 29th Mustang event where people will have cars and things, right?
Lots of cool
And then
cars.
the big one in November, will they be able to find out about that on the website? The
Yes.
November, that's a masquerade.
Coming up very soon.
November 10th.
Masquerade. I'm going to come disguised as something. I haven't
Just
figured.
come on.
Maybe as myself. That'll be scary. But yeah, seriously, thanks for all you guys do for all the patients and everybody. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us.
We'll be right back. All right, today, a lot of times I will introduce you to somebody and say, this person is new to Triad Today. I get to do something extra. This special guest is new to his job, and we're going to find out what that is. On my immediate right is very distinguished Dr. Anthony Graham. He is the new provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs from Winston-Salem State University. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thanks
Good
for
to
having
see
me.
you.
Good to see you as well.
By way of Kinston.
That's correct.
I'm a Winston-Salem boy. You were a Kinston boy.
Kinston, that's correct.
Now, before we get started, now I understand you had a PhD from my alma mater at UNCG.
That's correct.
Worked at A&T.
That's correct.
Now you're at Winston-Salem State. What in the world do you do if they all have like a round robin tournament? Who are you going to pull for?
I pull for each one of them.
Yeah.
And one of them will eventually win.
That's diplomatic.
Exactly.
Now, seriously, what attracted you to this particular job and to Winston-Salem State University?
Great question. Winston-Salem State is a calling for me, if you will. The mission of the institution focused on social justice and equity. It's really at the core of who I am. All the work that I've done in my professional career has focused on inequities and disparities and what we can do to address those issues, particularly in the education sphere. So Winston-Salem State, the mission is a natural fit for me. The opportunity to impact communities of color, it being a historically black university, all of those things just fit with who I am.
It came at the right time.
Absolutely.
Right man at the right time. What are your priorities for your first year as you look ahead?
3 priorities that we're focusing on. Number 1, we want to enhance the intellectual climate. We want to make sure that the entire campus, whether it's in the academic affairs area or the student affairs area, is an intentional learning space, an intentional learning lab for all of our students. So that's number 1. Number 2, we really want to make sure that we're engaging our community partners, that we're not insular, that we're partnering with our community stakeholders, nonprofits, business, corporate, our K-12 community, our community colleges. So we want to make sure that we're engaging and bringing different voices and perspectives to the table so that we can
not
enhance.
just somebody going down 52 or I-40 saying, hey, there's that nice looking place up there on the hill.
Exactly.
You want to be engaged with that nice looking
Exactly.
place. What developments or initiatives coming up are you excited about?
We have a number of things that I'm excited about. The first is we're actually transforming our learning environment. So most universities will have student affairs and academic affairs. We've merged and blended the two so that the student affairs now actually reports to my office so that we can be sure that we're being intentional in the learning outcomes. So if you're on campus working in work study, there are learning outcomes connected to it. If you're part of a professional organization, there are learning outcomes connected to it. If you're living in the residence hall, there are learning outcomes. Our job is to ensure that we're creating an intellectually stimulating environment, not only in the classroom, but external to the classroom, external to the campus. So really excited about that. We also have a number of initiatives focused on the underrepresentation of women and minorities in STEM. So we're making sure that we are producing more individuals, particularly minorities, who are going into the STEM professions.
I think that's great because I don't know if you've had a chance to meet David Mounts, who's on this show a lot, the CEO of NMAR, but he does a lot of things to help promote science and technology with young women. They have girls coming over and do events there. And I just think that's an important area that you're working on there. Before we run out of time, very quickly, you mentioned historically black college university. What does historically black university mean in terms of its role with Winston-Salem State specifically?
Fantastic question. Social mobility is what comes to mind immediately. We're taking individuals who are coming to us with aspirations and dreams, not only their own personal aspirations and dreams, but in many instances, their families' aspirations and dreams and generational aspirations and dreams, preparing those individuals not only to go into professions by various disciplines, but also to lead in those professions. Focus very specifically on addressing disparities, inequities, things that create social injustice so that we can make a more social just environment.
Before time runs out on us, what are you guys doing and what do you want to do to try to prepare teachers to do K through 12 in this area and stay in the state?
We have to do a great deal more there. As you know, statewide and nationally, unfortunately, we're just not getting enough people going into the teaching profession. So we're looking to do residency programs at Winston-Salem State University. We're looking to make sure that we have the right academic programs to produce the types of teachers we need for our K-12 schools. We have a lot to do.
A lot to talk about.
Yes.
And we'll have to get you back and do that. On screen, wssu.edu is the website as always, which I hope you will check out. Dr. Anthony Graham, the new provost. And thank you. Will you come back?
Thank you, absolutely.
All right,
Thanks
sir.
for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this. Our infamous roundtable on my right, but always the political left, the illustrious Ogie Overman, award-winning broadcaster journalist. Next to him, speaking of illustrious, beautiful, talented, tough-minded, president of Dudley Beauty Products, Ursula Dudley Oglesby, and next to her, speaking of tough-minded, but nice and very handsome, strikingly handsome, is David Daggett, attorney with Daggett Shore. Seriously, you saw David on the show earlier with Griff and everybody talking about backpacks for kids and what a great program that is. I don't know how much fun we're going to have with these guys because these are pretty heavy topics, but let's start out. Late last month, an Oregon judge ruled that a boy who identifies as a girl can now shower, not just can, but he's saying you're going to shower with biological girls, share the locker rooms. He told parents who were upset that this did not violate their constitutional rights. That's what he said. And he said, and you can always go into private school. Reaction, Ogie.
It's a tough call, Jim. I mean, you got to respect everybody's rights, but I've got to go with the kid. If they've had the operation and identify as a woman, a girl, I think they have the right to do that.
What if there's been no operation? What if there's been no?
Well, see, that's the gray area. You don't know really. I mean, I think so, but you don't want the kid to shower with the boys either.
Plus, Ursula, not to jump what you and David might say, but I'm worried. I mean, I wouldn't have money to send my kid to a private school if I had a daughter. So, Ursula, what's your reaction?
Right. I mean, I think the person reacted too far saying to send them to private school. I think that's a little much. I think, you know, we have to be sensitive to everyone on both sides. I mean, I know girls. I was a girl who didn't want to shower with the other girls. So, you know, I understand parents being, you know, a little, you know, just upset and just not understanding, because unfortunately we just haven't been able to keep up with all of the social changes, and we've got to figure out a way that respects both sides.
I think it's a tough issue. It's going to take a while to work out for society. The thing I don't like is that last comment by the judge. I take it as a flippant comment, and a flippant comment from a judge in this situation is not appropriate under any circumstances.
I agree. Now, a charter school in Atlanta just announced that it plans to replace the Pledge of Allegiance with a version that will be more inclusive. They say that many people in the community have been refusing to stand for the existing pledge. Now, are you okay with a publicly funded school, which charter schools are, changing the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Overman.
Well, I'd love to hear the wording of it, but if it's more inclusive, I would probably be okay with it. And the Pledge of Allegiance, it's not like a law, or it's not separation of church, and it's just the legislatures decided to have it. You know?
They said they're still working on the version.
Yeah.
Ursula.
Yeah, I think the Pledge of Allegiance is tradition. I mean, I like the Pledge of Allegiance, but I understand how some people can feel that it's not inclusive. So, you know, it depends upon what the other piece says. You know, I reserve my judgment for that.
David.
Yeah, we would have to know the full verse, but I'm a fan of the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think it's appropriate to have it. I think it should be in place. If we expand it, great. Don't contract it.
All right, now, most of us on this panel have covered this issue last year. Sadly, now we're going to cover it again because it has to do with something happening in Kentucky. School shooting happened earlier this year, which left 2 kids dead and 14 others wounded in a Kentucky school. Now, a Kentucky DA, the prosecutor, is now considering locking up parents who fail to secure guns at home, which their child then may use to shoot up a school. Are you guys okay with sending parents to prison for failing to lock up guns that are used in a shooting? Ogie.
Not necessarily send to prison, but I think you could craft a law making it a misdemeanor I mean, that's a responsibility. You really owe it to society and your kids and the other kids to lock your weaponry up.
Ursula.
I agree. I think that, you know, parents have got to be responsible for their firearms, no matter what. I don't think that jail is necessarily the answer to it. I mean, we need some sort of deterrent, but I'm not sure that prison is the answer.
David.
I'm a fan of gun ownership. I'm also a fan of gun responsibility. We need to craft a law that has responsibility to it to hold everybody accountable for the use of their guns.
In accordance with new regulations, anyone living in federally funded housing can no longer smoke inside their building. Residents say this new policy violates their rights. You guys have a problem with a government ban on smoking inside taxpayer-funded housing? Ogie.
Well, I don't like it, honestly. You have the right to kill yourself, but I think the feds do have the right. It's their, you know, they make the rule. If it's federally funded, they have the right to make the rules.
Ursula.
I disagree on that one. I think that you know, maybe they should find another way where certain floors are smoking, you know, just like we do in hotels, you know, that sort of thing. Certain areas are designated smoking areas, but to say that they can't smoke in their own apartment, I think that's, you know, overreaching.
I think you have to be very careful when you're regulating what goes on within the walls of your own abode.
Absolutely. This is still in the news. Former White House aide Omarosa says President Trump used the N-word back when he was hosting The Apprentice. All right, now here's a question. We won't get into the whole debate about the obvious stuff. I'm curious. Given who likes Trump and who doesn't like Trump, suppose he did. Suppose he was proven to be a racist. Suppose he stood up and said, I am a racist. Is that going to make any difference to his re-election campaign, Ogie?
Nothing will make any difference to the hardcore 20% of Trump-Luddites. You can write them off. They're deplorables. Write them off. However, that will swing just enough. That'll be the tipping point finally. I mean, after 1,000 others, what should have been tipping points, that'll end it.
Ursula.
I don't think it's going to make a difference to his base, but hopefully those who can see the damage that is being done will decide to make a change.
David.
I'm not going to be repetitive. I will say that we need decency and respect to all people across the board by everybody.
Yeah.
And we've had
Hear,
a
hear.
breakdown of that in society, and we need it back, and leadership needs to start bringing it back.
He's calling everybody names. I don't care what
Yeah,
color,
yeah.
size, shape, sexual orientation. If you go against him, he calls you names, which is a little unpresidential. All right, let's have a little fun with this finally. Renolda House Museum in Winston-Salem now offers 100 years free admission if you put their tattoo on you. Guys and gals, would you get a tattoo in order to visit a museum for free for 100 years? And if so, what body part would it go on? Ogie, I know you're in favor of body
No,
part.
I don't like tattoos, period. I'm not going to,
Ursula.
no.
No tattoos for me right now. Thank you, though.
I'm not a tattoo guy, and I probably won't live to be 158.
You probably will. David probably
He
will
might,
live to be
yeah,
100.
right.
David could use that. All right, well, that's all the time we have, except for this. According to boredomtherapy.com, if you give a child some pennies to play with, he'll be better behaved. As a bonus, if you give him lots of cash to play with, he'll grow up to be a congressman. For all of us here on Triad Today, I'm Jim Longworth. We'll see you next time.